Hi guys, Andy N, spoken label, back in the house on a Sunday morning. This is organised chaos because, long story short, today I've got the wonderful Roz Ottery with me. Roz, we should have been speaking to at 2:30 today, but I'm at my improvised theatre group at 3:30 today, so we've had to bring it forward. And because I was out last night at a murder mystery night, I completely forgotten, so I've kept Roz waiting for 20 minutes today, so huge apologies to Roz Ottery before we start. Now, I first met Roz. I know I was just talking to you over lockdown at one point, but you submitted onto Amanda's, my wife's, last anthology, which people are wondering obviously what that was called. That was From the Shadows back in January, and you were at the launch. And you were brilliant. You were then, and it's clear we had a real character there. And I thought I wanted to get you on today to talk to you because I know you've been not just a poet. You've been in a lot of other stuff. So we'll leave the hints at there. So Roz, obviously, for people who don't know you, then, first of all, then, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody? Tell them, obviously, where you're from, and we'll come on to your writing in a bit. But it's the entertainment industry. I think it's going to be a good start today. So we'll start there.
Hi, I'm Roz Ottery, as you heard, and basically at the minute I live in Yorkshire. I've lived in Yorkshire for about 25 years, but before that I was in London for another 20 years, and before that I was born in Portsmouth or near Portsmouth. So you can hear the burr in my R sometimes. So I got into poetry when I was 7 years old. I had a headmaster who took us for a lesson because our teacher was ill, and he brought a poem in, and I fell in love with it and was completely bowled over and have written ever since. So it was something that was a natural transition.
Yeah, I've got to go away and putting it now. Obviously, I hinted before, I know you've been doing a lot of entertainment work over the years.
Yeah.
And when we first spoke at Amanda's book launch, I heard the reference to you about you were a clown when you were at one point in the entertainment industry.
That's right.
But I also know you're a stiltwalker as well. Was that one surprised me when I was researching that?
All of these jobs are connected. They're not jobs that I've just sort of picked up. They do follow naturally through. So I did a performance degree, and at the end of that, I became the first. I introduced singing telegrams to Britain, which probably now sounds a bit odd because they turned into stripograms and all sorts of things. But when I did it, it was pure entertainment. We had proper singers all dressed in bellhop costumes. It was a very smart thing. You went to all the best hotels. I sang telegrams for Morecambe and Wise. I sang telegrams for people like Tom O'Connor, who then was quite iconic. I did Bob Geldof on the stage at Rainbow.
Oh, wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah, because we were the very first. So all the celebrities and quite a lot of well-known people asked us to come and sing telegrams. It wasn't just me. I had about 40 singers, and we had a company car. It just blossomed. Within weeks. And to tell you the truth, not being a businesswoman, it was completely overwhelming. However, I loved it, and it was good fun, but incredibly stressful because there were no mobile phones, and we had to run around London by using public telephones to find out if there were any more telegrams or whatever. So it was quite difficult.
Wow. Yeah, of course it would be, wouldn't it, back in the days and that? Because I can just about remember them pre-mobiles. Because obviously that's a little bit further for you, but I'm not going to age either of us, so we'll move on with that.
Oh, this was about 1980, I think.
Yeah. So I got my first mobile in the 90s, certainly. Yeah. Now, certainly a major point of your career seems to have been when you did a double act with John Lambert, didn't you? The director of Q20 in Bradford, when he asked you to do a show called The Circus of, oh my good grief, Mazalik, how you pronounced it. And that's where you seem to start from. I learned about, I read up about all your circus, like tumbling, still walking and juggling. So how did you meet John?
What happened then was I sold the business. Singing Telegrams was so successful, I sold it. Because it should have franchised really, but I didn't want to become big business in any sense or form because it's not me. So I sold it, and I always wanted to go on the stage. That's why I did a performance degree. And John Lambert with Q20 was I auditioned for him and got a part in one of his shows and gave me an equity card. And in those days, you couldn't get an equity card unless you had a job, and you couldn't get a job unless you had an Nectar card. So it was a real catch-22. And John, lovely man, saw something, and we had an amazing experience in Q20 doing Circus of Mazalek and other plays. But Circus of Mazalek was like a Barnum. It was like a little tiny Barnum, and we had to learn to walk on big balls, and we had to do all sorts of tumbling tricks. I used to stand on his hands above his head, so he would put his hands above his head, and I would stand on those above him with my hands, and all sorts of different tumbling tricks. So and then we learned to juggle. And it just sort of escalated. And he said after the show, seeing as we've done this, why don't we just do this for various things and see if we can earn some money at it while we're looking at how we get our next job. It's very difficult to get a job as an actor, and you spend long times resting, which means that the money doesn't come in. So we decided to do that to see whether or not we could, top up our wage, really. But we loved it. I was getting as much money in one day as I was in the whole of the week if I was acting. So it just carried on, and we developed over nearly 20 odd years. We developed this show that just escalated into all sorts of corners, and we did. I can't tell you. We ended up being chosen to go to Japan to represent Britain.
Wow, I read that was another thing. I read the next question. I was going to ask you about that. I know you did some work in Japan, so
that's right.
Tell us about that next one, definitely. Because there's so much I want to ask you, Roz. That's why, and I thought, yeah.
Well, we didn't mean to. We were just doing shows around the country. We did shopping centre after shopping centre. They were all big performance shows. We couldn't do birthday parties with the stuff we had because it was all big performance. We had a windmill which we used to do trapeze off of. So that was the Bradford Festival that started that. So what happened was that we were doing a show one day, and we finished, and a man came up to us and said, have you got availability to go to Japan? And he told us about it. And then he said, I've been the length and breadth of Britain watching people, and I've chosen you to represent Britain. So we went off it was all business class and beautiful hotels. They paid for the lot. We ended up in Japan doing shows, and with loads of other clowns from all across the world. Everybody that had been chosen to represent their nation. It was a bit like the Eurovision Song Contest, except in clown world.
Clowns, yeah. Oh, that must have, in some ways, that must have been quite a surreal experience to the pair of you, really. Because you're going in there with so many other clowns all over the world, weren't you? You'd probably seen so many different approaches to the thing, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Well, we got to watch all the shows, so we got loads of ideas for material.
Brilliant.
And I mean, in all honesty, we were humbled because you couldn't help but think, wow, all these people are better than us because they had their polished shows. I guess we did, and they may have thought that of us, but just watching the polished shows and how amazing, there were clowns from Russia that had studied 20 years to be a clown, and every movement, everything, it was like magic. It was beautiful.
Oh, it must have been. It's an amazing experience. Did you get Did you get a chance to see much of Japan with the pair of you over there? Or not really.
No, we were in the hotel, which was lovely. We had enough time to eat in the various restaurants, and that was it really. The rest of the time we were clowning because we had to keep moving in the stages. They were showing us off. It was a huge sort of what you call it, a symposium, I guess, except that it was in various venues. So there was all dignitaries, and we had to do all the clowning that we needed to do, and then afterwards speak to people on microphones and tell us about it. It was quite odd. One of the funny incidents was that John and I, within our Mangia Mo, we were called, and Manji would invite somebody up within the audience to do part of the show with us. And in Britain, we had to absolutely prize people out of their seats. And in Japan, people just got up. We would point at someone and without any quibble, they would just get up. And we were amazed because people usually are a bit shy. Anyway, towards the end of our fortnight, because we were there 2 weeks, and toward the end of our fortnight, one of the ladies who helped us with our equipment and could speak Japanese fluently because she was Japanese, and also could speak English fluently because we couldn't, said to us, we said, "Isn't it amazing? They're so brave." And she said, "No, they're not brave. They don't want to do it." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, you are guests in our country. She said, "So when you ask someone to do something for you, they will never refuse. It would be considered incredibly rude and actually, not decorum to do it." And we were mortified because the last thing we wanted was to include somebody in the show. So
Wow.
Anyway,
Wow.
The only thing I can tell you is that after each of those people came up and did the piece on stage that we asked them to, each one of them wanted to come back. So that's good. They may not have wanted to do it, but they all enjoyed it.
It's called success, definitely that one, isn't it? Yeah, completely. Now, I found it interesting before, obviously, when I was reading up on you, because you wouldn't know this, I'm actually dyspraxic. But I know you're dyslexic as well. So
yeah, I am, yeah.
Now, I want to come on to your poetry in a minute to talk about that anyway. How did that impact you when you're doing all your stilt walking and you're clowning with dyslexic?
Well, dyspraxia is slightly different because dyspraxia means that your body sometimes doesn't do the things that you expect it to do.
Yeah.
Whereas mine is really more to do with patterns. I can't read maps. Well, I can read them, but as soon as you take the map away, I have no ability to see what's on the map. So there's no point in asking me what I've just seen because I couldn't see it. So patterns are real difficult for me. I do not recognize people. If you've talked to me ever at a show and afterwards you come up, unless you're wearing the same things, I'll recognize your voice immediately. I'll recognize some of the mannerisms, but I will not recognize your face. I've been in a Chinese restaurant takeaway queue, and my daughter was 2 away from me and said, "You're not going to talk to me, are you?" Because I didn't recognize her. I don't recognize her.
I know what you mean with that, Roz, because I don't, you've probably seen it online, but I co-run a spoken word open mic night called Speak Easy with Amanda and our friend Steve. I do all the front of house duties. I'm ticking people off, make sure everyone's there to read and stuff. And half the time, it takes me 2 or 3 goes to remember who people are. So I can't remember. I'm calling either thinking, mate, or love anything but the person's name. And then sometimes calling them completely the wrong name as well. So it's like, you do it. It's what you've got to get used to it. I know. When you were growing up as a poet, weren't you? Your favourite poet piece was Rob Burns. Was that correct? Was it?
Burns. Could you say that again, Andy? Sorry, I didn't.
Sorry, this line disconnecting. Yeah, on your poetry side of things, when you were growing up, I think your favourite poet was Robert Burns, wasn't it? Is that correct? Or Burns?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I had an affinity with his poetry because, well, he rhymed, and in those days I didn't think there was any other such poems except for rhyming poems, and secondly, he was the only book that we had in the house. And I just, but it wasn't the fact that it was like no other choice. There were other poets. I don't particularly like Wordsworth. Sorry, everybody, but I don't. But that was the book in the house, and I picked it up, and it was just like an immediate thought that. And the point is, lots of them I couldn't even pronounce, and lots of them I didn't understand in the beginning. But there were a couple that were just stunningly beautiful, and I was in awe of his poetry.
No, it's fair play to you straight away with that. So he's obviously it's a classic poet indeed. So now, obviously, with your lifetime in entertainment we've been talking about, has this helped impacted your work, your poetry work? Do you reckon? Looking back at it now in a way, has it took a different way?
I honestly have had the most exciting life, and also quite a lot of adversity, because I grew up in a more abusive household, and so I was already soulful by the time I was about 8. I think I used to think deeply even then. So yes, I think it's affected me. I think the amount and the myriad type of things that I have done have absolutely sort of fueled the fire. Let's say that. Fueled the fire.
Yeah. I don't want to know what your family background, but I have read up on that. I think it's a good way to put it. You've had an interesting childhood. That's we'll leave it at that, should we then? Definitely so.
I have, but do you know what? All roads lead to where you stand, and I would not change anything of my life. The truth is that I like being sentient. I like awareness. I like the fact that I live my life in awareness, and things are poetry to me before I even write it. So.
Yeah, I think with the few times I've spoken to you and stuff, definitely you've got a soul as a poet, definitely. And some of it can be very serious, some of it can definitely be not serious. But I know you, Roz, straight away with that. So for that one, but yeah. So obviously, over more recent years, I noticed your poetry has come more to the prominence, hasn't it? Really. So was this planned?
5 years. Sorry, I've decided about 5 years ago now. When I retired, I decided that I would show my poetry, because up until then I'd never spoken it to anybody. It was all under my bed, as lots and lots of poets do that. They write and they don't show it. But I decided to be brave, because this is my soul. So the fact is that it was really hard to show this part of me.
Yeah, I think it is really, because it's my case. Was certainly I've been writing since I was 10, and I started showing it properly when I was in my late 30s, really, about 15 years ago. You do it's almost like you're outing yourself with your creativity, isn't it? Yeah, in a very different way.
Exactly what it's.
It's like, did it surprise people that knew you when you take you? Because they obviously knew through your entertainment that you're saying I'm a poet as well. Did that kind of surprise a few people?
It did not. It did not surprise my husband or my close friends. They all knew I wrote poetry. It's just that I didn't. It was too personal. It would feel like being naked in public to me to show my poetry. So it really was a big deal for me to do it, and I did it by showing it to strangers first. So they've all heard it now.
I think that's the best. Some ways the best way of doing it, because certainly when my case was, I said, and my parents saw a bit of my poetry growing up, but I kept a lot of it to myself. And it's only when I started making a few friends after I left uni in writing groups and then went to performing it and stuff. I did something similar to myself, where I think if you're doing that something to people you don't know yet, they're less judgmental, aren't they, some ways?
They are. I guess that I've been a little disconcerted, because I do honestly think that when you do say your poetry to people, you want a reaction that is positive. And my first experiences, nobody was negative. Absolutely was. It's just that I guess that there's not enough time to show poems that people will like. So you just have to, it's like pot luck. You just dip in to whatever you think may go down well. And in the beginning, I chose stuff that was very old, and I felt that perhaps I wasn't getting through as much as I wanted to. So I'm a little bit better at that now.
Yeah, that's fair play. Have you found, since obviously you started sharing your work to people more as poetry, has it impacted what you write?
Yes.
Yeah, can you explain more
then? It's definitely. I've realised I'm quite an old-fashioned poet. That's not really surprising considering the types of poets I like. But I have tried. I've been fascinated when I've gone to open mic nights and heard young poets do that fast rapping type of poetry.
Yeah.
When they do it well, it is mesmerizing, and I love it. And I thought, because I can write virtually anything. So what I thought was, what I may do is have a go at that. So I've had a go at a couple of those, and that has influenced me. Sometimes I haven't really shown much of that because it's not really me, but it has influenced how I see poetry, and that I think will influence everything I do, really.
Yeah, and that's fair play. I agree with you. Well, certainly when I've gone to overnight nights myself, and I always try to make sure I read a lot as well. And it impacts everything, the way you think and the way you do your work, definitely with that one immediately. So
Yeah.
I like it's at the moment for me. I've proved that our co-host Steve, he started writing 40-word flash fiction pieces for a couple of years. And I had a go at doing that for the first time a couple of months ago, and it was astonishing. It really was what you
Well,
do. But
I
you take a
didn't.
gamble sometimes.
Because wasn't English based. I've got dyslexia.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what a villanelle was. I didn't know what a haiku was. And, so yes, absolutely, it's influenced me. I love haiku. I do quite a lot of that on the daily haiku thing. But I'm still learning. I mean, I think you do all your life, don't you?
I think, yeah, I agree with you again. I play it again with that. It's like when you're a writer, you've got to be constantly evolving and learning. If you don't,
Yeah,
same with anything you do in creative wise, you've got to be constantly moving forward. If you
yeah.
don't start moving forward, you stand still. And I think that's dangerous ground with work at writers and creative people in general. So where do you envisage your creativity taking you next then? Do you have any sort of ideas?
Different. My honest want, and haven't done anything about it yet, is really to be published. But that's a step which I have not yet really got the bit between my teeth about, because I think every poet feels a bit like an imposter.
Yeah.
and,
No, I do.
um,
I still do. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean there. Yeah.
and to stand up and say I am good enough to be published is very, very difficult, because I'm not so sure it is good. I think it's what translates to other people. When I read my poetry to people, it seems to translate. But as yet, I haven't really got the bit between my teeth to really do anything about either publishing myself. I'm getting on. I wouldn't like these to be just all thrown on a fire and burned. So I really ought to do something. It's just that I'm overwhelmed. I'm not very technically minded. So I'm a little bit overwhelmed about how I do that. I will get my head around it. I usually do.
I think, yeah, fair enough. It took me to what, 39?
Yeah.
Is that right? It took me till 39 to get to that stage when I managed to work that one out myself. When a friend showed me how to use lulu.com. And I've had dealings with publishers since, but yeah, I've done all mine through self-publishing, and it suits me for the way I am at the minute. So when I get
Yeah.
to my novels and my novellas, that's another ballgame. But we'll cross that bridge another year, right? So yeah, I know what you mean. So yeah, of course. So like I said, it's now, I know you've had a few bits published in here and there. So, but like I said, it's, if people want to read more about you, Roz, where do you recommend they go to start wrapping up with?
Yeah, I didn't hear all of that. Sorry,
Oh,
Andy.
right, yeah, it's fine. I thought it's people are wondering here. We're having a few technical issues today because Roz's internet isn't great, and mine's doing some strange things at the moment as well, which is typical. So, right, I know, Roz. Yeah, to start wrapping up on part
Okay.
one, if people want to find out more about you, where do you recommend they go?
That's a hard one, because I'm not particularly public. I do open mic nights, and my main one is Halima's Jackanory. If Halima has Jackanory, then I go there to speak my poems. But I don't do podcasts or anything like that. I may do one day, but as I said, I'm not technically minded, so I'd have to have a technician to help me do that. So, I mean, if they want to know more about me, the best thing really to do is to go to one of the sites where I put my poems, really.
Yeah, that's fine. Sounds good to me. That. So, what we'll do, Roz, we'll wrap up. So I want to give you plenty of time to let people see the variety of your work in the second half. So, I've really enjoyed this today. It's been an absolute pleasure. So, hang around, everybody. We will see you all shortly. Two.